Hello, my name is Cameron Burwell from the University of North Texas. This is for the DFW Association for Business Economics Arthur A. Smith Memorial Scholarship Awards. This is a video summary of my essay about the elasticity differences in housing supply for both the cities of San Francisco, California and Houston, Texas. Inelastic housing supply inhibits the growth of cities and restricts who can access their agglomeration benefits by restricting supply and inflating prices to unaffordable levels for many Americans. Housing is commonly the largest monthly expense. 30% is the recommended max amount of monthly income to spend on housing. At 36%, San Francisco is barely affordable for those with an average wage. This has led to an overrepresentation of jobs in the technology industry and an underrepresentation of jobs in construction, logistics, and call centers. The expensive housing forces people to sprawl out to areas they can afford. Long commutes and expensive housing increase the opportunity costs of living and working elsewhere. Houston, however, is affordable at a lower nominal wage than San Francisco and a below average wage for the city. If San Francisco wants to have a more elastic housing supply like Houston, it needs to build more housing and eliminate restrictive policies and regulations that prevent the construction of housing. The source of these policies is public opposition to development that must be overcome if cities are to have a more elastic housing supply. NIMBYs are most often homeowners that are opposed to new housing. They will elect fellow NIMBYs into local positions of power to preserve the rural character of their town. They will claim there are no policy solutions to an increase in population to restrict supply and keep the value of their home high. They will spread misinformation and flood meetings with members to artificially portray their opinion as the majority to prevent people with Section 8 housing vouchers from moving into their neighborhood. These are some of the excuses and tactics of people that are opposed to new housing. This opposition to housing is what keeps regulations in place that restrict the necessary supply to keep the market elastic. There are 4 ways that developers can overcome NIMBY opposition: mobilize allies, address legitimate concerns and emotional needs, focus on mutual interests and not conflicting values, and finally, resolve conflicts of interest by persuasion or negotiation. Employers that struggle to hire new employees due to expensive housing and public service workers are good examples of potential allies that can help you correct any misinformation that they happen to come across. Second, concerns about increased traffic or the new building not matching the current aesthetic are fair but mitigatable concerns. Having a mobilized member and a developer interact with any opposition members in small groups or individually will be much more effective than any glossy brochure. Third, give a tour of previous property and show that allies, developers, and opposition members all have mutual interests. Finally, whenever persuasion isn't possible, negotiate. Compromising is generally not ideal because it means less revenue for the developer. If all else fails, showing respect will make the developer much more responsive to community concerns and help further development goals. All zoning ordinances restrict supply by preventing a certain level of population density. You prevent density by restricting the heights of buildings, only allowing single-family homes, and requiring a minimum lot size for that single-family home. Allowing for whatever building size and number developers need will allow them to meet the city's housing demand. Allowing the mixed-use zoning of residential and commercial areas can have your home, job, food, and entertainment all closer together. By allowing these popular destinations to be closer together, you are increasing density and decreasing travel time. The Wharton Residential Land Use Regulatory Index, or WRLURI, is a number that indicates restrictive local land use regulation. With an average value of 0, the higher the number, the more regulation there is. Private deed restrictions and historical districts have been used as de facto replacements for zoning ordinances in Houston. This, combined with Houston's land use restrictions, have raised its WRLURI from a negative 0.4 in 2010 to a negative 0.04 in 2018. However, the popular absence of citywide zoning laws has kept the supply elastic. If cities want to have more elastic housing supplies, they should seriously consider abolishing zoning laws so their supply restrictions don't raise to unaffordable levels. In direct contrast to Houston's elastic housing supply is San Francisco's remarkably inelastic housing supply. This is caused partially by zoning laws, but mostly by the arduous process to get a building permit. Multiple long public hearings and meetings, lawsuits, and the ability to deny zoning compliant housing costs a developer millions of dollars and can take years if successful. Another part of the reason for San Francisco's inelastic housing supply is 73.14% of the land is undevelopable. Zoning laws in many parts of the area and the process to obtain a permit prevent the necessary density that would otherwise mitigate this. Allowing for public input and preventing the process from becoming a roadblock is a balancing act that requires some trial and error. A good start is California's SB 330. This limits the number of public hearings to 5. This helps to shorten the process to obtain approval to build housing. But with city council meetings lasting the length of a workday, and the people showing up to city council meetings often being an inaccurate sample of the residents, more work still needs to be done to find a good balance. San Francisco has restrictive zoning ordinances and an arduous bureaucratic process that has led to remarkably inelastic housing supply. Houston has no zoning laws and a streamlined process that has led to elastic housing supply. NIMBYism in both cities is restricting the supply and creating inelasticity. To combat NIMBYism, developers should mobilize supporters, address the opposition's concerns and emotional needs, focus on mutual interests, and be prepared to persuade and negotiate. Individually addressing NIMBYism, zoning ordinances, and the permit approval process will allow developers to build the necessary housing for cities to thrive. Thank you for watching my super high budget production video. On the map, in case you're curious, the city with the lowest WRLURI is St. Louis, and the city with the highest is San Francisco.